So the rulebook for Rising Suns was just released, and this of course has a list of all of the cards, including prophecies and events. Thought I'd go through and again give like my immediate thoughts on things. I won't spend as long on this as I did with the previews, because there are a lot more of them here. So the first one that we haven't seen yet is Aristocrat. If the number of actions you have in play is, if the number of aristocrats you have in play is 1 or 5, plus 3 actions, 2 or 6, plus 3 cards, 3 or 7, plus 3 coin, 4 or 8, plus 3 buy. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. Very, my first thought would be to try to compute what happens if you play 1, then 2, then 3 aristocrats. So, you play 1, you'll have 3 actions left. You play the second one out of your hand. You now have 6 cards and 2 actions left. You play the third one. You're down to 5 cards, 1 action left, and 3 coin. So playing 3 aristocrats nets you 0 actions, 0 cards, and 3 coin, which is not very good. I can see this being the kind of card you get for playing it like the first one, then the second one. What would that do? That's like a lost city, is it not? Play the first one down to 4 cards, 3 actions. Play the next one, you're up to 6 cards and 2 actions. So yeah, playing 2 aristocrats is like playing a lost city. The other cool way that this could interact is you play 1 aristocrat and then you throne the second aristocrat. Something like that. So you probably don't want to play these just one at a time. It seems pretty inefficient. You also don't want to win the aristocrat split 9-1 or 10-0, because apparently if you have 9 or 10 aristocrats in play, they do nothing. Yeah, probably not the kind of card you want to open with, ever. Of course, everything in Dominion has exceptions, but yeah, I see this as if you have ways of modifying how many times Aristocrat is played, like Throne Room, Flagship, all that kind of stuff, then it probably gets a lot more powerful for getting that effect to repeat itself multiple times. Okay, we've seen that. Craftsman, +2 debt, gain a card costing up to 5. So my first thought with this is, it seems like in this expansion, they're really trying to emphasize being able to gain 5 cost cards on early in the game, either in your first or second shuffle. You put this in, and as long as it doesn't miss the shuffle, guaranteed 5 cost. And there are quite a few other cards that we've seen so far that do something similar. And if you think about, if you do the silver comparison, is this, it guarantees you the 5, but then of course you have to pay off the 2 debt. And at best on your next shuffle, you'll have 2 money left over. If this card were a silver, you bought the 5 and same outcome, more or less. You're not using that leftover 2 money in the maximum money case to really do very much. So I see this as a good way of gaining 5 costs. It'd be great for gain and play. Can't really see many times where it's super weak or when I would want to avoid this. If there are other ways of gaining 5 cost cards, then sure. But the good thing about this is that this card individually allows you to gain a 5 cost card, like just this thing. Whereas some of the other methods we've seen to hit 5 early in the game, those methods may not be used later in the game to simply gain a 5 cost card. They required you to, collide the card with other things or something like that. So that seems pretty powerful, probably something you're going to open with quite often. We've seen that already. We've seen Fishmonger already. We've seen Goldmine already. Imperial Envoy, +5 cards, +1 buy, +2 debt. Probably, I mean, this is comparable. The closest comparison I can think of is Marquis. In terms of, it draws you a lot of cards. This does not have, the thing with this is, Marquis is penalized for playing many of them in a turn because you have to discard down to 10. But this just flat out draws you a large number of cards. And again, if your money density is even just a tiny bit, like even if your money density is equal to a half, then you're paying this off easily with the cards that you're drawing. Obviously, it needs action support. You have to ask yourself, how good would this be in a very money-ish kingdom without any kind of village? Again, it'll depend on your money density, but probably pretty good. Cards like this that have huge upside but also downside are a little bit better for making sure you avoid duds, because you dig deeper into your deck. So you, in some way, you dig deeper into your deck to make sure that in case all of your good cards are buried a little bit too deep, you can still sort of have a proper turn. If this said only +3 cards, but you didn't gain any debt, you're more susceptible to duds. So a card like this might allow you to play just slightly more risky throughout the game. Okay, what do we have? We've seen Kitsune already. Litter, +2 cards, +2 actions, +1 debt. So it's a lost city, but instead of the downside being your opponent draws a card when you gain it, you get 1 debt. I see this as being pretty good. This is probably one of the most straightforward cards we've seen in the set so far. Pretty standard bonuses and a minor downside. But if the 2 cards you're drawing are really good cards, if you're thin and these are good cards, you don't care so much about that debt. So you'll probably want to include a lot of those typically. We've seen Mountain Tron already, seen Ninja. Have we seen, I think we've seen Poet already, and Rice. Rice Broker, this is new. +1 action. Trash a card from your hand. If it's a treasure, gain 2 cards. If it's an action, +5 cards. Sorry, did I say gain? I obviously mean +2 cards. So this is like, it's early in the game. It's a 5-cost Spice Merchant. Spice Merchant, you typically get to trash your coppers and cycle a little bit more early in the game. The difference being that you can always open with Spice Merchant. Rice Broker being a 5-cost means you can't open with it, except that in this expansion there are so many new ways of getting 5-cost cards either in the open or guaranteeing them in the second shuffle. I see this as being nice if the treasure trashing is not particularly strong, obviously, and later in the game when you have some actions that have outlived their usefulness, bang, that's a huge benefit. When you start greening, it's difficult to draw through your deck. If you have something like a bandit that you've played 2 or 3 times and you don't want any more gold, trash it, gain 5. Or a mine or a mint or something. I see this as being something, if you can open with it quickly and there isn't better trashing of treasures, it looks pretty good. And if you can just somehow throw it in, if you're going to have a lot of actions in the mid to late game that you don't particularly need anymore, that'll be nice. Okay, River Shrine we've seen, Riverboat we've seen, Ronin. Draw until you have 7 cards in hand. You can play this from your deck. Okay, so this is a shadow card. It's a library shadow card without the discarding of actions. So you don't get the any discard benefits. That means you can definitely draw actions dead. But it would be really good. Again, this is a great card to have to prevent you from dudding. You play a village right out of your hand, and then bang, you play this and draw. Well, I mean, typically, standard village, this would draw 3 cards. It's like guaranteeing you start with a smithy in your hand. I view this almost as like a smithy variant that you can play immediately out of your hand. And also there's the point that in some ways, Donald X has said a few times, he's made the point that shadow cards in some sense have an innate +1 card in them, but the +1 card that it draws is itself. This one doesn't really have that because it's a draw to X. If you play this from the bottom of your deck, just flat out, it only draws 2 cards, not 3, like a library would. But yeah, I see this as another good way to prevent you from having duds, to know that there's always good draw on the bottom of your deck. Obviously, it synergizes really well with any villages that don't redraw themselves. Root Cellar we've seen. Rustic Village. We've seen this, I think. Yeah. Samurai. This must be an attack. Yeah. Each other player discards down to 3 cards in hand once. Okay, so this is a endless chalice / hireling type card, where it stays in play the rest of the game. I don't actually view this as being particularly strong. It's quite expensive. It costs 6. +1 coin. You'll always take it rather than not, but that's not. Maybe given the theme of this expansion of acquiring debt throughout your turn, this is one way of sort of mitigating that a little bit, but this doesn't seem like a particularly strong effect. This on its own is almost certainly weaker than the hireling, draw 1 card per turn, which is why it's been given this other benefit of discarding. But a one-time discard attack is not like... It's one of those things that it can be a high variance effect. If it hits the opponent when they've got a great hand, then it really hurts them. If it hits them when they're holding a couple of junk cards, then it's literally useless. I see this as being pretty weak. But again, if there's a lot of these debt acquiring cards, then maybe it helps offset that a little bit. It's certainly weaker than hireling, and hireling is already one of those cards that it's quite expensive to get and put them into play. They're slow to activate in some sense. So I don't view that as particularly strong. Snake Witch. A lot of people have been wondering when we're finally going to see this thing and what it's going to do. Cantrip. If your hand has no duplicate cards, you may reveal it and return this to its pile to have each other player gain a curse. That actually seems very weak. You're never going to want to open with this because, for the first 6 or 7 turns of the game, you're extremely likely to have duplicates. This is the kind of thing that I think you just pick up when you have an extra buy and 2 coin. It doesn't hurt your deck being a cantrip, but it's a menagerie type effect if your hand has no duplicate cards. It's a different wording though than, I believe that's a different wording than the card menagerie. I wonder if there is actually a different interaction for it. What does this say? Revealing your hand if all the cards in it have different names is optional. If you do, you return Snake Witch. That's another thing. Returning Snake Witch to its pile, you can't use this over and over. And if you did, each other player gains a curse. If you can't return Snake Witch to its pile for some reason, the players do not gain a curse. Yes, you can't throne this and give out multiple curses. Note that you reveal your hand after getting the +1 card. If you have no cards in hand, you have no duplicates. Okay, so if it's the last card that you play of your turn, then this would trigger. This seems really weak. It's essentially a one-off unless you regain it after returning it. And you'll never open this. Someone let me know what I'm missing. Someone let me know when this is a particularly good card, because I don't see it. It's cheap. It's a junker, but it's a one-time junker. Yeah, I don't see this being very impactful. Let's move on. Tanuki, trash a card from your hand, gain a card costing up to 2 more than it. Okay, so it's a shadow remodel. That's it. Nice. It's a shadow remodel. Also keep in mind the point that shadow cards have this innate +1 card. Yeah, you're probably going to want some of these. The cool thing about shadow cards in general is that they, if you want them to, they never miss a shuffle. Difficult to open with, so it doesn't play the same role as remodel exactly with thinning out your deck on the second shuffle. But some situations where I can think of this being pretty good, late in the game, if you want to remodel gold into province or mill provinces, it's very frustrating in some games where you get into the greening phase and you have a very good chance of winning as long as your gold or province collides with your remodel. Well, with this, you can essentially guarantee that they collide. So that's nice. Okay, Tea House. Omen, card action, 2 coin. Yeah, I don't think... Is there anything in the game that gives cantrip with 2 coin? Grand Market, I guess, is probably the closest. That just seems like a pretty good effect. Again, the Omen cards, I think the Omen cards have been designed so that even if you ignore the +1 sun, they're still quite strong for their cost, because it encourages the prophecies actually getting unlocked, rather than, if you think about allies, very often you see there's an ally in play, but either the ally itself is so weak that you don't go for gaining... what are the ally tokens called again? Well, whatever. The ally tokens. Sometimes the ally is so weak that you don't go for the liaison to gain ally tokens. Sometimes the liaison is so weak that you don't want to get it, and you're not able to use the ally. But I have to look it up as soon as I'm finished with this. I can't remember. I can't believe I can't remember what the ally tokens are called. Whatever. Yeah, but the omens seem to be quite strong for their cost. I mean, this is essentially a a grand market. It doesn't have the restriction on not being able to buy it with coppers. It's also cheaper. Yes, I mean, I see that as a very strong card. Okay, and now we're back into the prophecies. Approaching army. After you play an attack, +1 coin. Setup, add an attack kingdom card to the supply. Okay, this is probably one of the least impactful ones we've seen so far. It just turns attack cards into slightly better. I don't see any... I can't think of any attacks off the top of my head where this is like game warping. But yeah, nice little benefit. Okay, let me zoom in a little bit more so Okay, maximum zoom. That's as far as I can zoom in. So yeah, this of the prophecies that we've seen and that I can remember, this one seems to be one of the least impactful to me. Bidding time. At the start of your cleanup, set aside your hand face down. At the start of your next turn, put those cards into your hand. So this is kind of like a lot of the events that we've seen that allow you to set up your next turn. Something like prepare. And what are the other? I mean, this is the save event for free, and also multiple times per turn. So this is again the kind of thing where you're going to keep a couple of actions back that are good to kick your turn off. And we've seen that some of the actions in this expansion are really good at helping you kick off your turn. Root Cellar, draw 3 cards, +1 action. Was the one we just saw up there, +5 cards, although you take some debt. Yeah, and even in a money-ish kingdom, if you go over 8 money, hold back a copper or a silver or something like that. It's again going to help. It's going to make things quite explosive. It's not as explosive as the I don't remember the name of the other prophecy. I guess we'll see it soon. But is it Expanding Kingdom? The one where any card you gain, you play it at the start of your next turn. Seems a little bit less explosive than that, but still pretty strong. This one has the benefit of it doesn't block gain and play. Yeah, and it doesn't play the cards automatically. You just put those cards in your hand. This means, this kind of eliminates the downside of greening almost completely. You only have to draw your victory cards once before you never have to draw them again. Modulo discard attacks. Something like this. Oh, yeah, this makes discard attacks very powerful. No, it doesn't, because you put them in your hand at the start of your next turn. Yeah, so the discard attacks have almost no effect. They're a standard discard attack. You only discard 2 cards, not 12 or however many you set aside. Yeah, cool. It's going to encourage earlier greening, certainly. Bureaucracy. When you gain a card that doesn't cost 0, gain a copper. Ooh. So this is one of the first. Well, we've seen a couple of prophecies that are strict downsides. This one is also a pretty big downside. And remember, you never combine prophecies. You never have more than one prophecy in the kingdom. So, the one we saw a few days ago called Panic, where you return your treasures, won't ever interact with this. You better hope that you have good trashing or a way of handling all these extra coppers. And it's whenever you gain a card. Like, it's not once per turn. It's if you're gaining cards mid-turn and then buying cards at the end, that's a lot of junk that you're adding. I feel like this is just going to encourage, I would say money-ish decks, but even a money deck doesn't necessarily want a lot of coppers. Yeah, this is something you're going to have to plan around. What is the omen we saw recently that trashes 2 cards? Is it River Shrine or Mountain Shrine? One of those two? Seems like the omen that you want if this is the prophecy that comes up. Okay. Okay, so we saw Divine Wind already. Sorry I'm not drinking coffee and spitting it all over my keyboard like I did this morning, but what are you laughing about over there? Absolutely bizarre. Hilarious prophecy. Can't wait to see it. Ruined my game. Enlightenment, we've seen that already. Flourishing Trade, we've seen that. Good Harvest, this is new. The first time you play each differently named treasure each turn. First, +1 buy, +1 coin. That's cool. That really enhances the strength of treasures. And this really encourages this makes money kingdoms or money decks a lot stronger. I mean, it'll take you a while if you're going pure money without even adding an omen to your deck in the first place. Again, this is maybe one of the situations where you read what your opponent is doing. If your opponent is going huge money to take advantage of this when it gets unlocked, then just don't get any omens, or don't play them. Play them very selectively. Play them 4 times until the last token is removed. But, a standard a gold, 2 silver, and a copper, that affords you a province, right? That will now, that'll only give you 3 more money. But, so, gold, silver, copper. Gold, silver, with this unlocked, gold, silver, copper played is enough to buy a province. It's more than enough, in fact. And getting only 3 treasures in your hand to hit province rather than 4 is pretty big deal. Playing 2 golds and a copper obviously does it. What does silver, silver, copper, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 would hit 7. I mean, you could if you have something in the deck that allows you to gain a lot of silvers, because 2 silvers and 2 coppers is now enough to buy a province. So this really encourages a lot of money. And any treasure actions or something like that, or kingdoms with lots of different treasures. I'm thinking about this prophecy in a kingdom that has a lot of plunder cards or loots. Loot, often going full loot is extremely difficult to beat already, and this would just make it that much stronger. Cool. Okay. We've seen this one already. Great leader. Growth we've seen. Oh yeah, we can't combine prophecy, so we can't have growth and good harvest. Harsh winter. This sounds like a negative one. When you gain a card on your turn, if there's debt on its pile, take it. Otherwise, put 2 debt on its pile. So it's an auto tax. It's an auto tax, but also really makes it, you really want to be the one to unlock this. If you unlock this on a turn, on your turn, and you can gain 2 strong cards, now those 2 cards have debt on them, and it gets to your opponent's turn, those cards are inherently more expensive. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's just going to really mix up. It's really going to mix up the. And think of a kingdom where you're alternating buying provinces. Again, you really want to be the one to unlock this on your turn, where you can buy that first province. Now, provinces essentially cost 10 for your opponent, unless they pass on buying a province one turn, and then they shift. Yeah, but then they're behind a province. Maybe if that happens, just build up your engine again on the next turn. Yeah, this is gonna make duchy dancing really painful. What if you can gain double duchy? What happens? You gain 1 duchy, pay off the debt, and then gain the next duchy and put the debt back on. Yeah, it's gonna really mix up greening phases, and the ability to, if you're in a 1 province per turn kingdom, I think it gives a big advantage to gaining that first province. Obviously, kind emperor. We've seen panic. We've seen progress. When you gain a card, put it onto your deck. Okay, so that's good and bad, because in the greening phase it hurts you, but in the mid game, just keep in mind that you want to put cards on your deck that help your next turn. I see this as being very good for you if you're gaining multiple cards in a turn. Put one card on top of your deck that allows you to kick off that turn, and the other card being whatever, maybe another one to help you kick off, or a payload card or something. But this makes the greening phase even worse than it normally is. So it kind of like accelerates you as soon as this gets unlocked, but then also slows you down a lot in the greening phase. Think about multiple province turns. If you double or triple province, your next turn is bad. Although it also makes gain and play easier. If you have the support to play more actions, gain a card mid-turn, it goes right onto your deck, and so gain and play becomes almost trivial. But yeah, it's going to really mix up the green phase. Rapid expansion we've seen. Sickness we've seen. Okay, now we go into the events. Amass we've seen. Asceticism. Pay any amount of money to trash that many cards from your hand. Okay, so what does this do on turns 1 and 2? It allows you to trash one card from your hand on either turn 1 or 2. Yeah, opening 2/5 with this is painful, because on the 2 hand you do nothing, and on the 5 hand you're trashing copper. Wait, did we see this before? I don't think so. There was another event or something like that I thought would be very painful to see on a 2/5 opening, but I don't. I think it's the one that's 3 cost trash a card from your hand. Anyway, yeah, it's like it's maybe not as strong as donate, because you need the money up front, but you can of course see how you might be able to get very clean very quickly with this. Compare it to something like Mint, which can only trash your treasures, but if you have 5 coin, often you buy Mint to trash all those coppers. But with this, you can buy the event and spend the extra 3 coin to trash your 3 starting estates. You got to get to the point where you can afford 5 with all 3 estates in hand. Yeah, I mean, it's a nice trasher. I think there are times when it's very powerful. It might be one of those things where if you have a 3/4 opening, you just get it twice and trash 2 of your starting estates, depending on what else is in the kingdom. But yeah, a convenient new trasher. And I wonder if this will work well with, we've seen some of the prophecies that are strongly negative, gaining coppers and gaining curses. So it's nice to have another type of trashing. Okay, continue we've seen already. Credit we've seen. Foresight. Reveal cards from your deck until revealing an action. Set it aside and discard the rest. Put it into your hand at the end of turn. So it's like it's a combination of save and ghost / pursue. This is good. I like this. If you have multiple buys, you can buy an action and then trigger this. It's like this is kind of like deliver in that sense. Normally you would buy deliver and then you would buy an action to put in your hand, but this you do the other way around. Of course, it assumes you need to have essentially drawn your deck. If you're tracking your deck, and you know what's, it could help you get a lot of junk off the top of your deck and get to a good action. It's not as strong as Deliver, because you buy Deliver once and every card you gain goes into your hand at the end of the turn. But and this one would be just a single card. And you also don't, in all cases, you don't necessarily know what the card that you're getting into your hand is. You just know it's going to be an action. But if you're tracking your deck, or if you're drawing your deck, then you'd probably know what it is. I mean, yeah, it's not very expensive, right? So you're going to use it if you have the extra money and just want to increase your hand size. But it's not going to trigger many of the. It's not going to trigger any discard synergies, because the only discard synergy I can think that it would trigger is Tunnel, because if you reveal, for example, Village Green, you don't discard it. You set it aside and put it in your hand. Okay. Gather, we've seen already. Kintsugi, trash card from your hand. Oh, we've seen that. We saw that one already. Practice, we've seen. Receive Tribute. If you gained at least 3 cards this turn, gain up to 3 differently named action cards you don't have copies of in play. So that's a pretty big restriction. If you've gained 3 cards, that's not always easy to do. Maybe, I'm thinking things like horse gainers, or obviously mid-turn gainers. The 3 cards you gain don't have to be different. This might even be the kind of thing so that, if you, just to get above this 3, maybe you buy a copper as the 3rd card to gain. But then the other restriction, gain 3 differently named action cards you don't have copies of in play. That seems very restrictive. Obviously, 3 action cards, there's no restriction on their cost, and this does only cost 5. But if you've gained 3 cards in a turn, you probably have a moderate number of action cards in play already. And so what are you gaining? It reminds me a little bit of Populate, because Populate costs 10 and it gains 1 card from every action pile. This, in some ways, might even be harder to attain. I guess you could buy this twice. If you have 2 buys and 10 coin, you can buy this twice to gain 3 cards you don't have in play, and then 3 more cards you don't have in play. They also have to be differently named, so you're not just gaining 3 King's Courts off of this. Yeah, it's nice to have a cheap way of getting multiple gains. Wait, what was Gather? Buy a Gather, then buy Receive Tribute. Yeah, I see this as being difficult to actually unlock. Okay, see Trade. +1 card per action card you have in play. Trash up to that many cards from your hand. So this is, again, a nice way of trashing cards in the early to mid game. Drawing cards in your buy phase is typically useless. But play 3 or 4 cantrips. Play 4 open Poacher Silver. Well, no, then you're only going to trash 1 card. But if you have a couple cantrips in play and you buy this, then you're trashing 2 cards. And cycling. You'll have to watch out for triggering bad shuffles. But Yeah, it's a decent trasher, I guess, but it's you're gonna want to do this. You're maybe I shouldn't call this an early game trasher. Maybe I should call this a mid game trasher, because you want to do this when you have 4 or 5 actions in play, and then you hit this and you can trash your 3 starting estates and a few coppers. You probably don't want to do this. You probably don't want to do this on your second shuffle when you're playing 1 action per turn. Save it for your 3rd or 4th shuffle when you have 2 or 3 actions in play, and then get all the trashing out of the way very quickly. That'll be an interesting one to play with. Looks like that's it in terms of new cards. Recommended sets of 10. This is actually kind of nice, because I very recently finished beating the Heart AI on every single recommended set in the Templegate Games app. So now I got to finish a few more of these. Yeah, I like everything here. Some of the prophecies and cards we saw are the things that really stick out as being like game changers. I honestly think the weakest card we saw overall is probably Samurai. The weakest card. So not events or I can't really classify prophecies as being strong or weak, because you're subjected to them whether you like it or not. You can talk about them being high or low impact. I think Samurai is probably the weakest card in the set. It's just too expensive for the effect. Of course, everything has its place. Oh, maybe Snake Witch. I forgot about Snake Witch. I'm not particularly impressed with this, but I would love if someone could let me know what I'm missing about this and when it becomes a really good card to pick up. A one-time curse that has a pretty heavy restriction. And not only that, you can't even guarantee, unless you're deck tracking very carefully. You might have 5 cards in your hand, all of them are different. You play Snake Witch, and now suddenly you draw a duplicate. It's a good thing he didn't put there's no typo capitalization. I don't have a duplicate in my hand. I didn't even buy one. My duplicate's on my tavern mat. Okay. Yeah. If someone could let me know when Snake Witch is very impactful, or the conditions when Samurai is very impactful. Sure, King's Court of Samurai, you start every turn with 3, but I still don't. That's it. Just seems too expensive and too slow to get going. Yeah, so that's it. I'll be excited to start playing this a little bit tomorrow. Thanks for watching.